There is one town left in the United States where the mail does not come by truck. It does not come by plane. It comes down the side of a cliff on the back of a mule. 5 days a week, a single wrangler leads a string of animals down a dirt trail into a canyon, and in the canvas bags they carry is the day's mail for the town at the bottom. But here's the strange part. Most of what is in those bags is not mail at all. It is food, groceries, bottled water, pharmacy refills, the box you ordered online. It all rides down on the same mules because there is no other way to get it there. This is the last mule mail route in the country. And for the few hundred people who live at the bottom of that canyon, it is not a novelty. It is the grocery truck, it is the pharmacy, it is the supply line, and that same trail, the one thing that keeps the town fed, is also the one thing that can trap it. Because the only way in is the only way out. And this canyon floods on a schedule. The town is called Supai, and it sits on the floor of a side canyon of the Grand Canyon in Arizona. To get there, you drive to the end of a road called Hualapai Hilltop, and the road simply stops. There is a parking lot, and beyond the parking lot there is a cliff, and beyond the cliff there is nothing you can drive. From that hilltop, it is roughly 8 miles down to the village, and about 2,000 feet of descent. No cars reach Supai, no paved road reaches Supai. It is one of the most remote, inhabited places in the country, and almost nobody outside of Arizona has ever heard of it. Sit with that for a second, because we are so used to the idea that anywhere people live, a road eventually goes. A gravel road, a logging road, a track a truck can crawl down in low gear. Something. In almost every corner of the United States, if there's a house, there's a way to drive to it. Supai is one of the rare exceptions to that rule, an inhabited American town where the road genuinely, physically ends miles short of the front door, and the last stretch has to be covered on foot or on the back of an animal. There is a landing pad, and a helicopter does fly in and out on certain days. But for the daily business of feeding a town, keeping it stocked, keeping it running, the workhorse is exactly that, a horse or a mule. So how does an entire town live down there, cut off from every road in America? To understand that, you have to walk the trail yourself. Let me take you down. You start at the top at Hualapai Hilltop, more than 5,000 feet up. The air is dry and the light is hard. You look over the edge and the trail drops away in a series of switchbacks, cut into red and tan rock, folding back on itself again and again. For the first mile or so, the trail is steep, all downhill, your knees taking the load with every step. The walls rise around you as you go, and the sky narrows to a strip of blue overhead. There is no railing, there is no shade, there is no cell signal. Then the trail flattens out, and you are walking along the floor of a dry wash, a wide bed of pale gravel and sand between towering walls. This is where the mules pass you. You will hear them before you see them, hooves on stone, and the wrangler comes around the bend on horseback leading 8, 10, sometimes more animals nose to tail, each one loaded with cargo. They have the right of way. You step to the canyon wall and let them go by, and you watch the supply line of an entire town walk past you in the dust. It is a quiet thing. There is no engine, no noise, just the sound of hooves and the creak of the loads. You walk for hours. 8 miles is a long way on foot with a pack, and the canyon does not hurry. Then, near the bottom, something changes. The rock gives way to green. Cottonwood trees appear. You hear water, and you come around a final bend, and there it is, a village on the canyon floor, houses and gardens, and a small grid of dirt paths tucked between walls of stone that go straight up on every side. You have walked into a town that no road can reach. That is the descent. Now here's the thing that turns a hike into a lifeline. Because the walk you just took, the mules do it in reverse, loaded, 5 days a week, all year round. And the chain begins long before the trail. It begins in a small town on Old Route 66 called Peach Springs, about 60 miles away by road. Peach Springs has a post office, and inside that post office is something you won't find in any other post office in the United States: a walk-in freezer. Think about why that has to be there. Every carton of ice cream, every frozen dinner, every package of meat, every temperature-sensitive medication headed for the bottom of that canyon passes through Peach Springs first. It cannot go straight down. It arrives by truck on the highway, and it has to wait, sometimes overnight, for its turn on the mule string. So the United States Postal Service keeps a walk-in freezer at that one small post office to hold the cold cargo of an entire town until it can make the trip. It is the only post office in the country built around a supply run like this one. That one freezer tells you almost everything about how far the ordinary has to reach to keep this town alive. If that is the kind of story you came for, the corners of America that the map forgets and the highway never touches, then this channel is where we go looking for them, one impossible place at a time. Subscribe and come with us. Now let us keep following the food. From Peach Springs, the cargo is trucked up a long dirt road to Hualapai Hilltop, the same hilltop where you started your walk. And this is where the mail becomes mule freight. The bags and boxes are weighed and loaded, and the animals are lined up. A single string can run from 10 to as many as 22 mules, led by one wrangler. Each animal carries up to 200 pounds. Down they go, 3 hours to reach the village. Back up, loaded lighter or empty, closer to 5 hours to climb out. And they do it 5 days a week, and have done it in one form or another since the 1930s. This is the last operating mule mail route in the United States, and it is the only reason the town below has anything at all. Do the arithmetic on that for a moment, and the scale of it lands. 10 to 22 animals, each carrying up to 200 pounds, walking 8 miles down and 8 miles back, day after day. That is the freight capacity of a single small truck, except the truck cannot come. So this is what a truck looks like at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. It is slow, and it is deliberate, and it is astonishingly reliable. The route has been contracted out to the same operator for more than 25 years. That is decades of the same hands loading the same trail in the heat and the cold, learning the moods of the canyon, the animals that pick their footing well, the loads that ride, and the loads that shift. This is not a stunt for tourists. It is a working freight line, and it has been running longer than a lot of the people reading this have been alive. The Postal Service even gives it its own postmark. If you mail a letter from Supai, it can be stamped with a special mule train postmark, the only one of its kind. But the postmark is the least of it. What actually rides down is life support. One person who studied this route, a curator at the National Postal Museum, put it plainly. Most of the mail, he said, is not mail at all. It is food, groceries and household goods, and medicine and appliances and online orders, all of it flowing down the cliff on the backs of animals because there is no road, no bridge, and no other way. And that's the thing to hold on to as we go deeper. Every single thing in this town came down that trail on a mule, or it did not come at all, which means the town and the trail are the same fragile thing. Remember that. We will come back to it. So who lives down here at the end of the last mule route in America? The people of Supai are the Havasupai, and the name tells you what the place is about. Havasupai means people of the blue-green waters. They have lived in and around this canyon for centuries, farming the canyon floor in the warm months and moving up onto the plateau in the cold ones, tied to the creek that runs blue-green through the rock because of the minerals in the water. Today, Supai is the seat of the Havasupai tribe, a sovereign nation with its own government on its own land. A few hundred people live in the village year-round, out of a tribe of several hundred more, and it functions as a town. There is a tribal council that governs. There is a store, there is a lodge and a small cafe. There is a school, Supai Elementary that runs from kindergarten through 8th grade, right there on the canyon floor. There is no high school in the canyon, so older students leave to continue their education, which is its own kind of hard. Think about what that asks of a family. To send a child on to high school, you send them up the trail and out of the canyon, away from home, because the next grade simply does not exist where you live. And there is a post office, the one at the receiving end of that mule string, serving one of the most remote zip codes in the country. Everything about daily life down here bends around the supply line. If you run out of something, you don't drive to the store in the next town over, because there is no next town over you can drive to. If the store at the bottom does not have it, it comes down on the mules. On the mules' schedule, not yours. A refrigerator, a stove, a load of lumber, a case of bottled water, all of it is either walked in on 4 legs or it's not there. It is a way of living that most Americans have never had to think about for a single day. And the people of Supai think about it every day, because the whole town does. There is also, in a normal year, an economy, and it comes from the water. Below the village, the creek drops over a series of waterfalls into pools that are an almost impossible shade of turquoise, set against red canyon walls. The most famous of them, Havasu Falls, has drawn people from all over the world. In a normal year, something like 20,000 visitors make the trip down that same 8-mile trail to see them. The tribe runs it entirely on its own terms. You cannot just show up. You need a permit from the tribe. Stays are capped, 3 nights at a time. There are only so many permits, and they are gone almost the moment they are released. This is not a national park. The Havasupai Reservation is the tribe's own land, and the tribe decides who comes down and how many and for how long. Which brings us to the next system and to the hardest question of all. What happens when someone down there gets seriously hurt or sick? You are 8 miles and 2,000 feet from the nearest road. You cannot drive an ambulance to the door. So how does medicine reach the floor of the canyon? For decades, the answer was a tiny clinic, a building of a couple thousand square feet, put up back in the 1970s. For a whole community, that was it. Then in November of 2023, something changed. The Indian Health Service opened a brand new facility in the village, the Supai Health Station, nearly 13,000 square feet, many times the size of the old clinic. It has primary care, it has a dental suite, it has a pharmacy, a lab, and radiology on the floor of the Grand Canyon. And the official description of it contains a line that tells you exactly where you are. The health station, it says, is accessible only by helicopter, by mule or horse, or on foot. Read that again. A modern medical clinic, and there is no road to its front door. The building materials, the equipment, the supplies, all of it had to come in the way everything comes in. That is the quiet miracle buried in a government press release. Somebody had to move nearly 13,000 square feet of clinic, the walls and the wiring and the dental chairs and the radiology gear, down 2,000 feet of trail into a canyon, piece by piece, because a moving truck cannot make the trip. And when a case is beyond what the station can handle, when it is a true emergency, the patient does not go up the trail. There is no time for that. The patient goes out by air. The medevac helicopter is the emergency room. It lifts off the canyon floor and flies the patient up and out to a hospital many miles away. That helicopter is not a convenience. It is the difference between living and not. It is worth pausing on how much rests on that single aircraft. Up on the plateau, or in any ordinary town, an emergency means a siren and an ambulance that reaches your door in minutes, and behind it, a hospital a short drive away. Down here, an emergency means weather. It means whether a helicopter can fly, whether the light is good, whether the storm has passed. The distance that a person up top covers in a 10-minute drive is, at the bottom of this canyon, a flight or an 8-mile climb or nothing at all. That is the trade the people of Supai make to live where their ancestors lived, and it's not a small one. And the tribe knows exactly how thin that margin is because they have said so out loud. During the pandemic, when the tribe made the extraordinary decision to seal the canyon completely and keep the world out, one of the reasons they gave was healthcare. They said plainly that the community had limited access to meaningful healthcare and that they could not risk an outbreak in a place where the nearest hospital is a helicopter flight away. So they closed. For roughly 3 years, the trail that feeds the town also became the line they would not let anyone cross. That is the paradox of this place. Sharpening now. The trail is the lifeline. And a lifeline that thin can become a wall or a trap in a single afternoon. Because this canyon does something on a schedule. Every summer, the monsoon comes to Arizona. Storms build over the plateau and dump rain fast, and that rain has nowhere to go but down into the side canyons, gathering into flash floods that come roaring through the narrow washes with almost no warning. The same flat gravel bed you walk down, the one that felt so safe and dry, is a floodplain. When the water comes, it comes as a wall, and a canyon is the worst possible shape for it. Rain that falls across miles of plateau funnels into a single narrow channel, and everything the sky drops upstream arrives downstream at once, concentrated, moving fast, carrying rock and mud and whole trees. There is no high ground to speak of when the walls go straight up on both sides. The village sits where it sits because the canyon floor is the only flat, livable, watered ground there is. And that same low ground is exactly where the flood goes. The blue-green water that gives the Havasupai their name, the water that draws the world down that trail, is the same water that can turn on the town in an afternoon. And when it does, that one trail in and out is exactly the problem. You can't drive people to safety because there is no road. You cannot always walk them out because the trail itself may be underwater or washed away. The only way to move a large number of people quickly is the same way the medevac works, up and out by AIR. Hold that image, because it is where this ends. Before we get there, if you've made it this far down the canyon with me, you already understand what this channel is really about. It was never the distance for its own sake. It is the exact machinery that keeps people alive at the end of the line. If that is your kind of story, subscribe so the next impossible place comes to you. Now let me show you what happens when the lifeline breaks. It has happened more than once, and each time the same choreography plays out. Go back to August of 2008. Heavy rain fell above the canyon, as much as 8 inches of it, and a dam upstream failed. A wall of water came down through the canyon toward the village where several hundred people lived. There was no driving out. There was no road to put an evacuation bus on, so hundreds of people were airlifted, lifted by helicopter, up out of the canyon, 8 miles by air to the hilltop, then bussed about 60 miles to Peach Springs, that same small town with the walk-in freezer. The floodwater tore out trails and footbridges on its way through. Think about what that means for a supply line that is nothing but a trail and a few bridges. In a single storm, the road that feeds the town simply ceased to exist, washed off the floor of the canyon, and the only exit left was straight up into the sky. Then the 3-year closure during the pandemic, when the tribe sealed the canyon by choice. When the falls finally reopened in February of 2023, after roughly 3 years shut, it was one of the longest closures the place had ever seen. The tourism economy, the thing that funds so much down there, had been switched off the entire time. Then, just to prove the pattern is not history, but present tense, look at the summer of 2024. In late August, storms hit again and the water rose again. And once again, the exit was the air. The Arizona National Guard was activated at the tribe's own request. and guard helicopters flew people up out of the canyon, more than 100 of them, tourists and tribal members lifted to safety. The falls were closed indefinitely. The lifeline had become the trap, exactly as it had in 2008, and the only way out was up. And this is where the sovereignty matters, because it is not the National Park Service that runs this rescue. This is Supai land, outside the park's jurisdiction. When disaster comes, it is the tribe that decides, the tribe that calls, and the state that answers at the tribe's request by sending the guard. The people of Supai govern their own canyon in good weather and in the worst weather, and they always have. That is the part that gets lost when a place like this shows up in a headline, framed as remote or cut off or hard to reach, as if isolation were the whole story. It is not. This is a nation on its own ground, making its own decisions, running its own permits, in its own school and its own emergency calls, deciding for itself when to open the canyon to the world and when to close it. The mule train and the medevac and the flood are the mechanics of the place. The choice to keep living here on this exact ground, on their own terms, at the bottom of this canyon, is the tribe's, and it is not new. It is centuries old. So think about what it means to live here at the bottom, knowing all of this. The same 8-mile trail that brings your food down on a mule is the trail that can vanish in a flash flood. The same air link that brings your doctor in is the air link that carries you out when the water rises. Everything that sustains this town and everything that threatens it runs along the exact same thin line up the canyon wall. There is no redundancy, there is no second road. There is the trail in the sky, and that is all. And yet the town endures. It has endured floods and closures and a pandemic and the simple daily fact of being 8 miles from the nearest engine. And it is still there on the canyon floor, blue-green water running past the cottonwoods, kids in a school that no road reaches, a tribe on its own land where it has always been. It endures because of that one supply line walked in the dark of every ordinary week by animals and a wrangler, carrying down the only groceries this town will ever get. So picture the end of a day at the hilltop. The sun is dropping and the canyon walls are going from red to purple, and the last string of mules is finished. They came down loaded this morning. Now in the failing light, the wrangler turns them around and they start back up the trail, hooves on stone, climbing the 2,000 feet toward the rim, out of the shadow and toward the last of the sun. 3 hours down, 5 hours back up. Empty bags now, ready to be filled again tomorrow. And as they climb, watch them for what they really are. This is the entire supply line of a town, walking back up the only way in and the only way out of the last place in America where the mail still comes by mule.